Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. I want to give you some physics, some history. I want to take you to places that you didn't expect. I want to call this the case for divinity. These are the kinds of channels that physicists love, because I'm going to give you some information that flies in the face of anything today that is being seen as the truth. How do you describe that which is the creative source? That creative source that always was before the universes were ever created. Such a difficult thing for any human being to even conceptualize. An energy, immense, more than immense, bigger than you can imagine immense. And if you could define the energy, it would be undefinable. If you could put it into your three-dimensional constraints, it would be pure love. And that's all there is. You might say in the eternal blackness, and yet it's in the eternal light. It is undescribable, unexplainable, and there it is. Today, it goes by many names. You've often called it God. That's your perspective. In this tiny little planet where you think you're alone. And back before even time was time, before you could have the concept of time, in a source which had no dimensions because that wasn't even defined yet, that source of love created what we will call the multiverse. As you look out among the cosmos at the moment, you're still not aware of what might have happened to create your universe. You're not aware that there are many universes, and there are. Unconceivable, even for you, to look at how big your universe is. Think of many of them. And the question might be, well, where are they? And the answer is yes. Each one is dimensionally specific. They could be on top of one another and you would never know it. And every so often, these multiverses collide in a very interesting way, not physically, but in dimensions. I will say there is something called dimensional membranes. That would be the energy of the dimension that surrounds the dimension. Think of your universe being in some kind of an invisible bubble. And that bubble was its own dimension, or the dimensions that are yours. Other universes may be actually part of this, but ever so often, they come together in an unusual way where the membranes of dimensionality collide. And it's not physical collision. It's not matter on matter. It's dimensional collision. And when that takes place, an enormous amount of physical energy is released. And from one universe to another, or even two to one, they simply explode into a new one. That, my friends, is the Big Bang. The Big Bang, even today, is coming under question. It should, because it doesn't make sense, does it, that from nothing, suddenly there would come everything? More than unexplainable, almost foolish. And yet that was what you thought. Because everywhere you look, it seems to have come from one source and exploded from that way. I just told you why. As your universe started and became still another universe, the chemistry and all the physics of it was unique. It had its own dimensional twist, you might say, to become the universe that you see today. Now here's something else for physicists. When you have two or more multiverses which have unique dimensionalities come together to explode into another new one, often you have multi-dimensions involved. So whereas you think you know what dimensionality you're in, right now on this planet, for instance, you're in 4, even though scientists says there's 11 or more. You know that something else is there, perhaps invisible, the way things work, that you don't work with every day. But let me tell you something that physicists will discover. Through your technology in the future, you'll be able to look perhaps at some of these many galaxies that you're just now starting to discover. With your new technology, you look into what was formerly black sky, and it reveals a million more galaxies. It takes your breath away. But as your technology even gets better, you'll be able to examine them with new tools. Not necessarily to see them, but to know the attributes of them. And it may startle you, physicists, to know that some galaxies don't have the same physics that yours does. That is a holdover from the membrane collision. When it takes place and it's reported, I want you to remember this channel. How big is that creator? How much love is there? And what happened next? In every galaxy, this one included, the chemistry involved in creation would eventually be available to come together in its own way to create life. Life is everywhere, dear ones, everywhere. When you begin to find it, and you will, microbial, in your own solar system, perhaps oceans and life on moons of other planets, when you find it, will you be surprised? Most will not. But that will lead you instantly to the idea that you're not alone. The kind of life you have on this planet was not that hard to start. On this planet, it took 5 tries before you got photosynthesis. You were a little behind the curve, as we say. And there were so many other planets in this universe, in the solar systems, that you can't even see with a telescope, that developed like you. The chemistry was the same. The physics was the same. They didn't necessarily develop into multi-arms and 14 eyes and 13 legs. They developed into creatures that look a lot like you. Because that's the chemistry. And that's the physics. And it isn't different anywhere in this universe and this galaxy that would create something so different for you. When you meet them, they'll be like you. Does that shock you? They're everywhere. Put so far apart, however, that it would take something like very high technology, or perhaps more than technology, I will call it soul energy. The attributes of divinity to be able to travel from one place to another through that which you've called entanglement, through that which is more than physics, but is borderline magic to you now. And that's where you'll meet them probably first. The love energy that was always there, bigger than you can imagine, that creative source, when it was there, it created something else. Billions, trillions of pieces of itself. It would then go to a planet and be part of the life that developed. Every single planet that had the kind of life that you have had an awakening moment where it went from biology to divinity, and a soul was given. Yours was no different. What is your creation story? Think about it. In this culture of where I sit, it's the Adam and Eve story. Humans that didn't have divinity, looking just like you, got it. And everything changed. If you ask indigenous all over this planet, they will have their own creation story. But it goes just like that. Humans looking just like them received divinity. This is when that which you call God came down and gave you something you didn't have, a soul. For this planet and this earth, you can track it back and you can actually see it scientifically. It was the time you went for 24 pairs of chromosomes to 23. Something happened. Track it. You'll see. You are not like you started. Each one of you has a divine soul. That is taught by almost every system of belief. But humans did something that most do. They saw the divinity. They believed there was a creator. They called it God. But they made it like the only thing they knew, human. And they took that love source that created all the multiverses, and they made a human out of it, a father. And the fathers of the planet all featured discipline, rules, reward, punishment. And that became this beautiful love source. You humanized God. From the very beginning, this was done. The Greeks were the best. They made their gods dysfunctional. So the gods went out and stabbed each other and all the numbers of things. This was God to you. A dysfunctional God that loved you so much that you would torture your children forever if you didn't do things. I don't want to insult any of you because that's starting to change. But dear ones, to this moment, it's like you were all playing with toy dolls. And God was one of them. And you had no idea that it was so much bigger and what you could do with the divinity in you when you dropped all of the humanistic parts that you've been told. Is it something you're ready for? To drop the idea that perhaps there's a God who would punish you ever. There isn't. Instead, there is a God that wants you to step into your soul and meet that which is the bigger you, perhaps for the first time. Isn't it interesting that almost all humanity, when they arrive, looks for something bigger? It's intuitive. And what if that bigger thing was a bigger you? I've done this today to give you a bigger picture of a reality. I've included the science so that when it becomes proven, you may look at this channel and say he was right. And if he was right about that, maybe everything else was correct as well. That loving source that created that which is you included you as the creator. Part of that loving source that created the multiverses is inside you and always will be. You were there when that happened, when that creation took place, before the multiverses were made, and you will be here forever, long after this universe is gone. That is the love of the Creator. There is no punishment, only unconditional love and compassion for you. Why don't you get to know it? Not that hard. I'm Kryon, in love with humanity. And so it is.